Elizabeth Warren was confronted about her position or her inaction in reference to Israel and Gaza. And you have to see this because I want to show you who Elizabeth Warren really is. A Palestinian woman who lost 68 family members in Gaza confronts Senator Warren. She had no answer. Watch this. So this is Elizabeth Warren. And I believe that's her husband. It looks like kind of hard to see, but watch this.
Senator thank you. Can I bring you some water to get started? Of course, we have tap water. We also have butter. I have 60 members of my family killed over the last 5 weeks. I just want.
Okay, so she is a constituent of Elizabeth Warren, and she just told her that 68 members of her family have been killed over the last 3 weeks. Okay, so listen to that.
I just want to know how many more have died before you're going to call for a ceasefire.
So she's asking Warren to call for a ceasefire.
I don't know. Like, what do you Wait, I mean, what do I have to do? How many more of my family survived to call for a ceasefire? I don't know. Like, how much more do I have to sit in to call for a ceasefire? People are in your office every day asking to call for a ceasefire, and you are refusing to call for a ceasefire.
I don't think this is the proper place for it.
So then she was told that this is not the proper place, right? But there is no proper place. She said, call Senator Warren and tell her she must call for a ceasefire. And there's the number there. Now, this goes on because they were protesting outside as well. So it says here, Senator Warren supports a Zionist regime that has been oppressing Palestinians for 75 years, especially Gazans for the past 18 years of the blockade.
If we don't get it, shut it down! Let Gaza live! Let Gaza live! Let Gaza live! Let Gaza live! If we don't get it!
So this is local to me. So they were, again, outside confronting her. They said, again, Elizabeth Warren, you have blood on your hands. So listen to this one here. This is why I say what these politicians tweet and what they say in these interviews don't mean anything. Because when you talk to them in person, this is how they treat you.
Hey, people in my family, you have blood on your hands. Shame! Shame!
There's the restaurant right there. So there's Elizabeth Warren right there. You can see the little blonde little mop right there. I think I know exactly where this is. Because I was looking at this and I'm like, is that? It's dark. I can't see the sign.
You have blood on your hands! Shame! 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 Hey, people!
It's embarrassing, but you know, it's the reality. If you lost 68 members of your family, you'd probably be a bit angry too. So of course, you know, the police came. The police did have an appearance there. So it goes on to say, Senator Warren left the restaurant hearing Palestinians, Jews, Harvard students, and Cambridge community members shouting, ceasefire now. So yeah, I thought this was in Cambridge. I thought it looked familiar. Listen to this.
No! Ceasefire now! 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 Ceasefire now!
So that's them in the car. That's them right there in the car. She's in the passenger seat, I believe.
Ceasefire now!
Yep, there she is. So they drove Elizabeth Warren out of that restaurant there. I mean, can you blame them? Now, I want to connect this to the conversation that Khanna had recently on CNN. Why is it that some people are willing to call for a ceasefire and some people are not willing to call for a ceasefire? Khanna is at least willing to have this conversation. Elizabeth Warren is running away from the conversation. So I want you to hear what Khanna says in reference to ceasefire.
While some members of the Progressive Caucus on Capitol Hill have joined in calls for a ceasefire, my next guest here tonight, a high-profile progressive himself, has called for humanitarian pauses instead. The question for some is, does today's announcement go far enough? Congressman Khanna of California is here with me. What do you say? Did the 4-hour pauses go far enough in your view? Is that what you were thinking of?
It's a good first step, but no, more needs to be done. I mean, you need to get 2 million gallons of water in there. We need to get fuel into the hospitals. And while Hamas is using Palestinian civilians as human shields,
Stop. We're going to stop that right there. Pause that right there. No, we're going to stop using that rhetoric. The reason why he's still using that rhetoric is because as long as they continue to say that, they have an excuse not to call for a ceasefire. I want everyone to really understand that. Now listen to what else he says, and then I'm going to tell you why even the humanitarian pause is problematic. I'm going to tell you why that doesn't go far.
I have said that they should not be bombing civilian sites, civilian dense sites, hospitals.
Israel should not.
Israel should not. I mean, I don't think they're intentionally targeting civilians.
But are they doing enough to not hit civilians in your view?
Pause. Listen to the way they're framing this. He says he doesn't think they're intentionally doing this. Guys, there was another hospital that was attacked recently. There was another refugee camp that was attacked. Those are not Hamas. It's gotten to the point where even other mainstream media outlets have had to say, listen, something is not right here. Like these people, they're just hitting whatever and whoever. Doctors at the hospitals have made public statements saying they don't know if they're even going to live, if they're even going to make it because they're attacking the hospitals and they're trying to save the patients. They've cut off the power at one of a Sharifa hospital. And so the babies that were on the incubators, one of the babies did not make it. How are the babies supposed to live on the incubators if you cut off the power? Those little babies aren't Hamas. This is what you use to push back on that rhetoric, you guys. When people say, but a husband, no. If you know they're in the tunnels, why are you going after people above ground? Thank you, Soccer. Shifa Hospital. Thank you.
In my view, they should have more operational patience. I mean, look, they have the right to self-defense. It was a brutal attack on October 7th. Any country has the right to get Hamas perpetrators. But when you have a hospital, when you have a school, when you have a refugee camp with many children, even when Hamas is there, intentionally, I think you try to get Hamas out, you get them into the tunnels, you track them. Look, it took us 10 years to get Osama bin Laden. But the loss of life there is heartbreaking. And so I would say do not bomb civilian dense sites.
Yeah, I mean, they struck.
So what Khanna has called for is not a ceasefire, but a humanitarian pause to not strike for a couple of hours so that they can get humanitarian aid into the Palestinian people in Gaza, those that are left. And to that, I say this. That's like telling someone who is a victim of abuse to allow the abuser to not beat the crap out of them for a couple of hours, give them a little bit of a break, allow the person being abused to be able to get treated, get the supplies and things that they need. And then once that pause is over, you can go back to beating the shit out of them. That's what that sounds like to me. Let's continue.
An ambulance recently, Israel arguing that Hamas is using it to transport weapons and fighters. President Biden said today that he was frustrated that this is not happening soon enough, that he's been pushing Prime Minister Netanyahu for a 3-day pause or more. He has a lot of influence on what the prime minister does. He's kind of bear hugged him. He's been one of his biggest supporters since this war broke out. Do you think he could influence him to do more?
He doesn't. I mean, I think certain things, they're just not listening. My sense is that he has asked for the humanitarian pause. He wants the pause to be longer. I think the United States government has had candid conversations about doing more to minimize civilian casualties, and the president is making progress. And I do think that the White House has really stepped up in talking about Palestinian lives and making sure that they're protected.
Your political director just resigned recently because you are not calling for a ceasefire. Would you ever call for a ceasefire? Do you ever see yourself doing that?
I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, at some point, the war has to end. But the reason I didn't call...
He wouldn't rule it out. At some point, the war has to end. How many people have to die before that happens? The numbers continue to increase. He's not calling for, let me be honest with you, he's not calling for a ceasefire because Ro Khanna wants to run for president in 2028. That's why I believe he's not calling for a ceasefire. Elizabeth Warren, she may try to run again too, but Elizabeth Warren, I told you, she's always been pretty weak when people called her progressive. And I said, Elizabeth Warren is not really progressive. And people were telling me that I was being too critical, but you see how she is. These people are not revolutionaries. These people are not ready to fight. These people are not ready to go to battle. These people are not even willing to call for a ceasefire. And we're supposed to believe that these people are going to fight for us in office. Ro Khanna's just thinking about his next career move.
Call for a ceasefire is that when you have the brutal murder of 1,400 civilians and people have committed that terrorist attack, if you just say, okay, let's have a ceasefire, then you're basically saying there was no consequence to doing that. So I think there has...
Let me debunk that.
To be more operational patience, precision, surgical operations, and getting the Hamas terrorists that were accountable. And once we do that, I also think there needs to be a peace process with equality for Palestinian rights.
What is your...
The accountability issue that Ro Khanna just raised doesn't make any sense in reference to a ceasefire, because who has had the power over the decades? That has been Israel, not Gaza. Who has controlled the resources over the decades? That has been Israel, that has not been Gaza. Who stole the homes? Who stole the land? Who put the people in an open air prison? Who occupied the people? Who continued to, berate the people in public? We've seen these videos. Who continue to shame the people? Who prevent the people from leaving the gates of Gaza to being able to get medical treatment in Israel if they need that type of procedure? That has been Israel. So essentially what Ro Khanna is doing, Ro Khanna wants accountability for the part of the population that has been oppressed. But Ro Khanna is not calling for accountability for the state of Israel, the government that has been the oppressor, that has occupied the people, that has shamed the people, and that basically is the reason why they are in this position to begin with in the first place. When you talk about Hamas, you have to also remember the state of Israel funded Hamas. So he wants accountability for one side, but he don't want accountability for the other side. And Ro Khanna doesn't take money from the Israeli lobby. So you see how this is?
Thinking on this spin, I mean, have you ever been close to calling for a ceasefire? Because this is really dividing your party, but especially progressives.
It's dividing the country. I mean, look, there was a sit-in in my district office today. I've never seen this kind of mobilization since the Iraq War. I mean, there are people out on the street and they're upset with what they're seeing on television. They're upset with what they saw with the Israelis who were killed. They're upset with the hostages, and they're upset with the Palestinian children who are being killed. It's an emotional issue. For me, I said, let's get the water, humanitarian aid. I'm calling 20 members of Congress, and the UNWR commissioner is having a meeting with us on Monday, so we're going to hear directly on the ground what's happening. And I said, let's not have bombing of dense civilian sites. That's where I am right now. But every member has a slightly different perspective. And I
you're
honestly,
not close to calling for a ceasefire.
Not a full ceasefire, because I do think that there's still more to be done to get the Hamas terrorists, but there needs to be, in my way, different techniques to doing that.
This is really going to backfire on a lot of these politicians, people like Ro Khanna, people like Elizabeth Warren, because your constituents are not with you. Like, people do not agree with you. You lost people on this particular issue. And like I said before, Ro Khanna is another one that pretends to be progressive, but he's completely captured as well. And I just want to show you how so badly Joe Biden and the Democrats in general are doing with this particular issue. there was actually a protest outside of Joe Biden's home in Delaware. This gentleman here actually supported Joe Biden, and I want you to hear what he had to say.
I organized for him in North Carolina and Georgia. I did 2 years of my life to save this country's democracy. This man is responsible for thousands of children's death. The genocide taking place right now. Over 11,000 civilians and 4,000 of our children are dead. Every day they're bombing hospitals, mosques. They're public executions in West Bank and Gaza. Shame on you. Please convey him. Thank you. God bless.
Okay, so that gentleman was someone who supported Joe Biden. It said, we're outside Biden's personal home in Delaware where thousands are marching and a demand to end the U.S. supports for Israel massacre of the Palestinian people. So that was just one of the things. And then there was actually Breakthrough News reported this, that media workers have taken over the lobby of New York Times headquarters in New York City in protest of their biased coverage of Palestine. So it says here they are reading from newspapers bearing the names of the thousands of Gazans murdered by Israel in the last month. Look at this.
Ceasefire now! Killed by apartheid Israel on October 7, 2023.
Ceasefire now!
Mohammed al-Salhi, killed in Gaza by apartheid Israel in October 7, 2023.
Ceasefire now!
Mohammed Lafi.
Ceasefire!
So again, that is the New York Times office. And honestly, the media, right? One of the most overlooked venues to actually fight back against. We think about politicians, but also the media are the ones that keep the narrative at bay. There were also several Congress staffers, over 100 congressional staffers that walked out in DC demanding a ceasefire as well. It says laying over thousands of flowers to honor those who were killed. And you can see a little bit of this here.
We are congressional staffers on Capitol Hill, and we are no longer comfortable being silent.
We were horrified by the brutal October 7th attacks on Israeli civilians, and we are horrified by the overwhelming response by the Israeli government that has killed thousands of innocent Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Our constituents are pleading for a ceasefire, and we are the staffers answering their calls every day.
Most of our bosses on Capitol Hill are not listening to the people they represent. We demand our leaders speak up, call for a ceasefire, a release of all hostages, and an immediate de-escalation now. We are gathered here today to mourn the loss of every single beautiful and innocent life. We join now in a moment of silence in interfaith prayer for those who we have lost.
And then they go into the moment of silence there. So yes, that was congressional staff members. But you know, not everybody was as off the mark about this issue. In fact, former President Jimmy Carter actually understood this issue very well. As you know, Jimmy Carter was only a one-term presidential president. And could this be part of the reason why? I'm not sure. But this is old school. It's old video, so it's kind of fuzzy. So sorry. But this is Jimmy Carter when he was on Hardball back in the day. And I want you to hear what Jimmy Carter had to say in reference to the issue with Gaza. Listen to this.
And also emphasize the word not, that is peace and not apartheid. That's what I hope to accomplish with this book, is some move toward that goal. But there's no doubt that within the occupied territories, Palestinian land, that there is a horrendous example of apartheid. The occupation of Palestinian land, the confiscation of that land that doesn't belong to Israel, the building of settlements on it, the colonization of that land, and then the connection of those isolated but multiple settlements, more than 200 of them, with each other by highways, on which Palestinians can't travel, and quite often where Palestinians cannot even cross. So the persecution of the Palestinians now under the occupying territories is under the occupation forces is one of the worst examples of human rights deprivation that I know. And I think
even worse though than a place like Rwanda.
Yes, I think, yes. You mean now?
Yes. I think the impression now of the Israelis, of the Palestinians by the Israelis, is worse than a situation in Africa like the oppression of Rwandans and the Civil War.
I'm not going back into ancient history about Rwanda, but right now, the persecution of the Palestinians is one of the worst examples of human rights abuse I know, because the Palestinians...
When you're talking about right now, you're not talking about, say,
I'm not talking about ancient history, no.
Well, Rwanda wasn't ancient history, it was just a few years ago.
You could talk about Rwanda if you want to. I want to talk about Palestine.
So you heard that part right there? He said it was one of the worst human rights abuse issues that he's seen. This was many years ago.
What is being done to the Palestinians now is horrendous in their own territory by the occupying powers, which is Israel. They've taken away all the basic human rights of the Palestinians, as was done in South Africa against the blacks. And I make it very plain in this book that the apartheid is not based on racism, as it was in South Africa, but it's based on the desire of a minority of Israelis to acquire land that belongs to the Palestinians and to retain that land, and then to exclude the Palestinians from their own property and subjugate them so that they can't arouse and demonstrate their disapproval of being robbed of their own property. That's what's happening in the West Bank. And the people in this country, in America, never know about this. They never discuss this. There's no debate about it. There's no criticism.
And sorry, that's all I have of that clip. But I think that is a very telling moment there from Jimmy Carter, calling this out back then. But there are some who are still calling it out today. And like I said, like there were people who were calling out this issue before October 7th. And Dr. West is still doing that. And I think you need to hear this speech from Dr. West. This was sent to me earlier today, of what he has to say about standing with the people that are occupied. And by the way, I cannot be moved on this issue. I cannot be moved on this issue. I see some people want to email and send a DM and say, but what about this? What about that? I cannot be moved on this issue. I will always stand with the people and fight for the people who are oppressed and the people who are occupied, because they are not the ones in power. They are not the ones that control the resources. You always fight for those people. So I want to be very clear about that. And Cornel West delivers that so beautifully. And this is why someone like Cornel West, Jill Stein, RFK ain't good on this issue. But this is why they do feel that these other candidates are going to be a threat to the duopoly, because they are going into places where the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is not willing to go. Listen to this.
Years have been terrorized, traumatized, and hated, and we dish out love warriors and freedom fighters every generation, which means that we stand in solidarity with anybody who's occupied, anybody who's subjugated, anybody who's exploited. And that's why we focus on Gaza at this moment, because a genocidal attack is taking place. Yeah. 10,000 dead and 4,000 precious children. And don't let anybody tell you that because you love Palestinians and Palestinian babies that you hate somebody else. It just doesn't follow what our brothers and sisters. We don't hate Jewish brothers. We don't hate Jewish sisters. We don't hate Jewish siblings. We loathe, we hate a vicious Israeli occupation. We loathe and we hate a vicious siege against Gaza. And the least we can do at this moment of overwhelming barbarity is have a ceasefire. And yet you got these cowards in Washington, D.C. talking about a humanitarian pause. Please get off the crack pipe. Wake up. See the humanity of precious Palestinian brothers and sisters. And the American empire has the nerve in this building to veto a humanitarian pause with our precious Palestinian brothers and sisters being bombed. What kind of country are we? What kind of people are we? And we send a message to Palestinian brothers and sisters and siblings in Gaza. You are not forgotten. We see you. We focus on you. We give attention to you. And it doesn't mean that we're not concerned with our indigenous
brothers and sisters. So I think you can see this on TikTok, guys. So there's more clips of this on TikTok. But you know, again, like not everybody is wrong on this issue. Some people do have it right. So if you were to ask me, if you're thinking about who you are going to support come 2024, for me, I would never support someone who gets this issue wrong. I have been consistent on that, very consistent on that. I still stand by that, regardless of who the person is. I'm not voting for any candidate that doesn't get this position correct. And that's where I stand on that. And I would also advise you of this, because it's very clear to me, there are going to be people that you may like. There are going to be movers and shakers that are actively going to go out of their way, wait for it next year, out of their way to try to prevent and try to discourage you from supporting people outside of the duopoly. Hell, it may even come from people who said they support third party and independent candidates. And then you'll have to ask yourself, why are they doing that? I don't believe that everybody who says they advocate for third party and independent candidates actually is telling the truth. There are infiltrators everywhere. And I believe that some of the people that say that are also infiltrated. You can just tell, just pay attention. Because if I turn around and I see that you saying all that, but every time we have all these different independent or third party like people like running, doesn't even have to be national races, even local races, and you do nothing but attack. This is not to say you can't criticize. Everyone can be critiqued. But you do nothing but attack. But I see you mighty quiet about people running in the Democratic Party and people running in the Republican Party. I'm looking at you with a side eye. Pay attention to that. You'll see that too next year. Pay attention to the people who say they're pro third party and independent, but they're criticizing the third party and the independent candidates, and they're not critiquing the Republican candidates and the Democrat candidates. Or maybe they are critiquing the Democrat candidates, but they're not critiquing the Republican candidates. Pay attention to that. For some people, they could be trying to shift you into the Republican Party. Watch out for that. And for some, it could just be personal bullshit. Watch out for that. But for me, when I go to vote, I damn sure am going to make sure I vote for the person who is right on that particular issue. And if they don't get that issue right, can't vote for them, period. So let's not be fooled. And let's be very cautious, because I've seen this happen before. I'm in organizing spaces, but previously in organizing spaces, I've seen people come in that claim to support the effort, and then they're actively working against the effort that they claim that they support, meantime offering no other solution. And on this show, what we're going to do is, you're not supposed to come to this show and just hear criticism and just hear attack and hear what's wrong and what's bad. The idea is for you to hear what's wrong, but then for you to see there's other options and there's other solutions. Because you can watch drama on TV. But my thing is, keeping it real, is this If you're not presenting people with any other type of solutions, and your goal is just to attack and smear and take down everybody, this is bad, I hate this, I don't like that person, everybody's the enemy and everybody's bad but you, and you're not offering no other solutions, I don't want to hear it. Because I want people to have some positivity. I know things aren't perfect. I get it. Trust, I know. But what I don't want to happen is for you to leave this show and feel like all hope and all energy is lost and it's not worth it doing anything. Because that's not who I am. That's not who I am. So hopefully, when you come over here, hopefully you do get some type of motivation to do something else. It doesn't always have to be on the national level. It can be within your community. Like I told you, we have the food and clothing drive this Saturday. We have RBN chapters in different locations in the United States. Why do you think we started those chapters? Because we know after all this is over with in 2024, a lot of people are going to go back to sleep. They have nothing else to go back to because they're only focusing on electoral politics and they're not organizing within their communities. That's why we started those chapters, to give you something else to do. So my thing is this. If you don't be calling me or texting me or emailing me with any bullshit. If you're not coming to me with any other solutions or any other options, and you're just coming to me to complain that you don't like this and you don't like that, I'm not trying to hear it. Come to the table with some solutions, concrete solutions and suggestions and other things to do other than just shitting on everyone and all these people all the time. Because that will get old. And believe me, I'm just going to tell you from experience, people might be with that for now, but eventually people will turn away because people will get tired of hearing it. So you want to come with some solutions. The food and clothing drive is this Saturday. I think I'm good on donations. Don't send no more donations. Just say that. I think we're good on that. We met earlier today. I think we're good. Boston Community Harvest Food and Clothing Drive, November 18th. That is at the Marcus Garvey Center, 116 Dudley Street, Boston, Massachusetts. Come on out and hang out. Again, don't mail me any more donations. Don't mail anything else. We're really good. So, but I appreciate you guys. Like, you guys really did come through. So I hope to see some of you there this Saturday. This is what we're doing over at RBN. This is what we're about. This is why we started those chapters, to get people to organize and realize it's about changing things within your community. And you don't really have control over what happens on the national level, but you do have some control over organizing within your community. And that is very important. And that's what I want you to walk away with when it comes to this show. I can't speak for everybody else. Thank you for the super chat, Justin. The failure of the two-party system to meet people's basic needs has created a vacuum. Open the door to good third parties like the Green Party, but also open the door to con men like Trump and Vivek. Here you go. Thank you, Gala. Okay, maybe I will vote for Dr. West after all. Fire. Thank you, Justin. Sounds like you're talking about Jimmy, Sabby. Thanks for the amazing work that you do. I'm not calling out any names in particular. I'm just saying, like, people are tired of negativity. Like, offer solutions. Thank you, Roger. CBIs, worker co-ops, public banks is the ticket. Thank you so much for that. And that includes people on Twitter too, by the way, because Twitter is just a hot mess of negativity. That's why I don't like to be on there that much. So the thing is yeah. We all know shit's fucked up. We all know that there's a lot of damn problems. My thing is, come with some alternatives and come with some other solutions. That's it. That's it. That's it.